My name is Brent Nelson. I'm in the political science department here. And some of you may know there's kind of a big event next week on Tuesday, and it's not a hurricane, we hope. But there will be an election here, and so it's, of course, appropriate to have somebody who's talking about politics on campus. As you may know, also this week there have been some, the issue of race has come up, and with Colin Powell's endorsement, and I don't know, I was reading Kathleen Parker in the Washington Post recently, and she was talking about race in this campaign. So it's it's probably a really good thing to have somebody who has focused a good bit on race at various points in her career, and so we're very happy to have Crystal here, and we're looking forward to it. But I'm going to introduce Andrew here, who is going to introduce our guests. So, Andrew.
Welcome to CSBT's 6th event of the school year. I encourage Furman students to attend our upcoming meeting and officer elections this Monday at 7 p.m. in Furman Hall 121. Pizza will be provided, and we will be watching the movie V for Vendetta to celebrate Guy Fawkes Day. Also, this Saturday, CSB is attending a Students for Liberty conference at UNC Chapel Hill, featuring Executive Vice President of the Cato Institute, David Boaz. Please stick around after the event and talk to a CSBT member if you are interested in attending this free conference. Please note that CSBT as a whole neither agrees nor disagrees with any of the speakers that we present. As Thomas Jefferson said, air of opinion must be allowed to stand, so long as reason is left free to combat it. Furman students are intelligent and mature enough to evaluate competing claims and to find the truth for themselves. Ms. Wright's opinions are her own, and we hope that you will be eager to engage them with a healthy skepticism and minds open to plural opinions. Crystal Wright is a communications consultant and is the owner of Baker Wright Group, LLC, a full-service public relations firm which specializes in communications, counseling, media relations, message development, media training, and crisis communications. Crystal Wright is an accomplished blogger at Town Hall and her own website, Conservative Black Chick. Ms. Wright appears frequently as a contributor on CNN and Fox News. Crystal earned a Bachelor of Arts in English from Georgetown University and holds a Master of Fine Arts in Theater from Virginia Commonwealth University. Please join me in welcoming Crystal Wright.
Well, thanks, Andrew, for that gracious introduction. I want to thank all of you for welcoming me to Furman College. It reminds me a lot of William and Mary. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I spent a lot of time on field trips as a kid in Williamsburg and William and Mary. So let's get to the topic at hand, which is this so-called election we have next Tuesday, and I hope all of you are going to vote. I want to talk to you a little bit today about what I believe is significant and has gone underexplored by the mainstream media, and I would argue also a little bit by the conservative media. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what I think the president's how his race has played a significant role in his election, his presidency, and his re-election campaign. And again, you don't have to agree with me. That's not what this is about. This is to get you thinking critically about who and what you're voting for in life. And remember, you can always change that. You shouldn't be beholden to a party or a person. You should be beholden to your political beliefs and what drives you as individuals. So, here's the question. Would President Obama have gotten elected if he wasn't black? If he was a white candidate who went from community organizer to senior lecturer turned state senator, who mostly voted present, then ran for president after serving 2 years as a senator, I think many in the mainstream media would have asked a lot of questions about Barack Obama. Instead, the media was caught up in the appeal and the rapture of Obama. The Black Jesus, as David Axelrod nicknamed him. Obama used his charisma to sell Americans something they had never seen before. An image of a black man who could be president. And what I mean by that is an image that he was electable. And the media bought into it, turning Obama into an immortal legend, almost godlike, like he was a celebrity. who believed that he could, quote, slow the rise of the oceans and heal the planet, as Obama arrogantly said in his 2008 campaign nomination acceptance speech. I'm sorry, as the Democrat nominee acceptance speech. I believe President Obama's race, combined with the mainstream media's incessant swooning over his so-called uniqueness, is the reason that he got elected in the first place, and I think it's the main reason he's running neck and neck with Mitt Romney. Over 95% of blacks voted for Obama because he was the first black candidate who was really electable. He was soft-spoken, he was educated, he wasn't a Jesse Jackson type, you know, he wasn't a race hustler. He wasn't trying to sell people something and get something really in return for himself, although that's the appearance that he gave. But black Americans did not vote for President Obama based on his policies. As evidenced by MSNBC host and Tulane professor Melissa Harris Perry. She recently wrote in the National Review, quote, "No matter what policies he pursues, the president's racialized embodiment stands as a symbol of triumphant black achievement." I also believe that whites too voted for Obama because he was the first acceptable black candidate to really run. He didn't speak in a Negro dialect, as Harry Reid said at that time, and he was articulate, bright, and clean. You know, Senator Biden described that of him in 2008. That's Senator Biden, who's now the Vice President of the United States. I think whites voted for Obama somewhat out of racial guilt, as author Shelby Steele commented in The Roots of Obama's Rage by Dinesh D'Souza. He said that whites could finally feel atonement for America's racial past, its slavery past. And they voted for Barack Obama as president, feeling good about themselves. But the one thing Obama was short on was experience. In The Price of Politics, Bob Woodward notes Obama's acute awareness of the fact that his race was a huge asset in his running for president in 2008, not his experience. In his 2006 speech to the Gridiron Club dinner, Senator Obama joked, and I'll quote you, "I want to thank you all for the generous advance coverage that you've given me in anticipation of a successful career. When I actually do something, we'll let you know." Woodward noted, quote, Obama had not mentioned the party of high purpose. His speech instead was about Obama, his inexperience, and in the full paradox of the moment, what he had not done. 2.5 years later, Barack Obama was President of the United States of America. So let's move a little bit to how did Obama do this in 2008? What was the game plan? How did he use his race as leverage? Well, he battled his white opponents, Hillary, Bill, and McCain. He and the media cried racism a lot to shore up his support among Americans and his popularity. And in the book, The Game Change, this is a quote from the book Game Change. January the 9th, the New York Times published a scalding editorial that accused the Clintons of running an angry campaign that came perilously close to injecting racial tension into the contest, citing Hillary's remark about Martin Luther King and Lyndon B. Johnson, and Bill's bizarre and rambling fairy tale comments about Obama at Dartmouth, end quote. And you remember when McCain ran his celebrity ad about Barack Obama accusing the then candidate of being a celebrity and more interested in his ego than anything else? Well, the media pounced. And when it was revealed, Obama's pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, gave racist sermons during the 20 years that the Obamas attended his church, the mainstream media was fairly muted to the response. It got a little play, but not a lot. So you know what Obama did? He gave a speech about race relations, saying, oh, we still have a racist past. And then, in the speech, he never condemned what Reverend Wright had said. And suddenly the media was happy. All was well. The immortal black Jesus was restored. His image of he could do no wrong. He was on his way to the White House. And then in a campaign stop in Missouri in 2008, Obama accused Bush and McCain of trying to make voters, and this is a direct quote from him, I want you to listen to this, scared of him because, quote, he's got a funny name. You know, he doesn't look like all those other presidents on those dollar bills. You know, he's too risky. And this is what Barack Obama said about himself. These are his words. The message here was, I'm black, those guys are white, they're racist, I'm black, I'm good, they're bad. Sound familiar? That's what Obama's doing to Romney right now. And when it came to scrutinizing Obama's past and comments in public, the media was really quite silent. And remember Obama's disparaging comments about rural Midwestern voters who cling to their guns and religion? He said that they had an antipathy to people who aren't like them. They were radicals. Well, when you look at a lot of the Midwestern rural voters, a lot of them were white. And the media didn't seize on these comments at all. And if a white person had said that about black people living in the inner city, you can bet a lot would have been made of that. So let's move to the White House, the road to the White House. Obama becomes president. He, along with the press, interpreted his historic election to mean he shouldn't be held to the same standards of accountability as the 43 predecessors before him, because he was unique. He had a different race than everybody else who came before him. The view was reinforced when Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, as Bill Merger in the Wall Street Journal said, for, well, it's not exactly clear what he was awarded it for, but it was more telling he didn't decline it. He had done nothing at that time. Barack Obama had done nothing at that time, and he got the Nobel Peace Prize. Ask yourself why you think that was. Obama and just a little note on his record, I don't think he would qualify for the Peace Prize right now. Obama has killed more terrorists with drones than any other president in modern history. The Middle East is more divided at any time in recent memory. With the stroke of a pen, President Obama has stood with some in the Arab Spring, while others in Syria, Iran, and Egypt have been ignored. Democratic uprisings have been crushed by dictatorial regimes, and that really doesn't sound like a record worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize. But the president thought being elected the country's first black president was a mandate for him to govern as he pleased, as he saw fit, which meant giving Americans Obamacare when they wanted jobs. And when Republicans shellacked Democrats in 2010 during the midterm elections, picking up 63 seats, the largest gain by one party in 62 years, things began to fall apart for the president. Obama no longer had a rubber stamp of approval for his policies, and the 2-year majority that the Democrats controlled Congress and he was president was suddenly gone. So out came blame and what I would call the race card. When Republicans and the Tea Party challenged him on things like spending and the debt ceiling, the DREAM Act, raising taxes on the rich, Democrats howled it was because the president was black, and the news media went right along with it. Stories ensued blaming Republicans for America's credit downgrade and painted what? The GOP as obstructionist, with the subliminal message always going on that Barack Obama's agenda was being blocked because he was black. So the truth is, when Obama and the Democrats had control of Congress, he wasn't interested in working with Republicans. Rahm Emanuel said, when they had all the votes ready to pass Obamacare, you know what he said about the Republicans and they wanted certain changes, want to really sit down and have a formative debate? Fuck them. That's what Rahm Emanuel said, his chief of staff. Fuck them. And this is all in Bob Woodward's book, which I encourage you to read, The Price of Politics. So when the spell was broken in 2010, the president didn't understand, as the Orlando Sentinel recently wrote in its endorsement of Mitt Romney, that, quote, other presidents have succeeded with the other party in control. Leaders find a way. It was Obama's job as president, and I would still argue, well, it's probably too late now, but we'll see what happens next week. It's the president's job to make deals. Reagan made deals with Tip O'Neill. You had Clinton who made deals. People have made deals in the past. This president doesn't know how to make deals. So let's just move on to what we're here to talk about, which is the campaign and the end of an election next Tuesday. We see the same racial tactics, I would argue, that are being employed by Obama and the media, all too eager to help along his limping presidency. As a friend pointed out to me recently, he said, you know, Crystal, when presidents run for a second term, usually the media is scrutinizing their record and checking the boxes. Has he done this, 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 and the things he's promised? But the media seems to be spending more time on Mitt Romney, who actually has a record, a good business record. He was a governor. He's done a lot of things well. But the media has assailed Romney's tax and entitlement reform, plans, along with his job creation and debt reduction plans. And it doesn't write anything about how Obama has not lived up to his record, and he has no plan to move the country forward out of its malaise that we've been in for the last 4 years. Only after the second debate, with less than 3 weeks before the election, and Romney's stellar performances, debate after debate after debate, did editorials start to appear in liberal publications like the Washington Post, which actually wrote an editorial, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And you know what the head of the, I think the headline, or in the body of, I think the headline of the editorial by the board of, by the paper's board of, editorial board was, "Show us a policy." This was to the president. And I can tell you, the Washington Post is one of the most liberal papers out there. They said, "Show us a policy." And what they said was, while they don't agree with everything that Mitt Romney was putting forth, he at least had a plan. And the president doesn't have a plan but of attack for a second term. So let's go to the first debate a little bit. We see that without the shield of the media spin, Mitt Romney successfully made his case to the American people. He actually said, it's time for a new path. Okay? He said that over and over again, and he showed us his path. He laid it out. He talked about renewing American prosperity. Mitt Romney, not the news media, has continually hammered away at the president's failed record each and every time, in every debate, and on the campaign trail. And the media, the mainstream media, if it picks it up, it's always about some kind of gaffe, you know, something that they want to blow up that really distracts the American voters from what's at hand, which is our economy and jobs. Obama said that he would cut the deficit in half. These are things that Mitt Romney has reminded us that you all know probably, but I'll repeat it. Obama said he would cut the deficit in half, but he has more than doubled it. I think he's increased it by 60%. He said he would pass immigration reform and end the fighting in Washington as we know it. None of that's happened. He said the stimulus would prevent unemployment from rising above 8%, just give me the money, please. I need $800 billion. It hasn't happened. Oh, wait, I forgot. It did happen for a minute, right? Last month it went down 2 percentage points, 7.8%. He said if he didn't get the job done in 4 years, quote, this is what he said, we are looking at a one-term proposition. That's what he said about himself. You know what I think? I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly what we're looking at. So along the way, here we go, we're in campaign 2012. He and his partner in distraction, the mainstream media, Obama, has been successful, very successful, in using race as a stand-in for a record to make the case for his re-election. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. He keeps saying he's inherited a mess. He just needs more time to get it done. I need 4 more years you guys need 4 more years of this bad economy and this joblessness and misery. You know what I think? I think if Jimmy Carter were running in this environment, Jimmy Carter would love 4 more years in 1976 as an excuse to talk about running against Reagan. I'm sorry, I think it was 76. I'm sorry, I'll duck that here. But from cutting taxes for, 1980, excuse me. From cutting taxes for the wealthy, the 47% Bain Capital, even calling Romney a bullshitter in the recent Rolling Stone interview, Obama's message is clear. Romney is a wealthy white guy that you can't trust, and he doesn't have your interests at heart. So you should really just look at what I'm not doing and vote for me, because I'm a good guy, I promise. If you give me 4 more years, I'll do it. And the mainstream media showed no outrage when the president called him a bullshitter. You know, they just said, oh, I guess that's okay. Somebody actually told me in an interview I did that was Rolling Stone magazine, Crystal. He was trying to be hip and cool. Well, I wonder what would happen if Romney called the president a bullshitter in Rolling Stone magazine. Just a question. Then you remember in Michigan when Romney talked about, at a campaign stop earlier this year, he said, I was born here, I'm a son of Michigan. People said that was Romney trying to stoke the birther movement again. And then when Romney called Obama he said he was angry and running a divisive campaign, MSNBC host, and these are his words, not mine, accused Romney of engaging in, quote, I wrote about this in my blog post, the niggerization of Obama. He said it's clear. He's calling him an angry black man. It's the niggerization of Obama. Well, as a black woman, I've never even heard of that. And I've been called a lot of nasty names. Didn't get any pickup in the mainstream press at all. I wrote about it, some other folks wrote about it in conservative blogs. Something to think about. So in my mind, it's all about, evidently, Romney the racist, right? And Obama, the first black president that just, we've got to cut him a break. He can't be held accountable to his record. And you remember when Mitt Romney had the courage and the guts to speak to the NAACP? I think that was one of his best speeches. And he told blacks why he should vote, you should vote. You know, he said, this is why you should vote for me. This is what I'm going to do. He laid out his plan. He talked about entrepreneurship. He talked about family values, school choice, education. And it was reduced in the mainstream media to a set of boos when really he got a standing ovation that you didn't see on TV. And he got booed, I think, maybe once. And black Americans gave Barack Obama 95% of their vote. Barack Obama said he had a scheduling conflict. He couldn't speak to the NAACP. And let's not forget, at the 2011 Congressional Black Caucus, their annual legislative conference, the president spoke to, this is, you know, the Congressional Black Caucus, for those of you who don't know, are supposed to be the conscience of the Congress. For black Americans, they're supposed to make sure that they represent the interest of black America as it affects, with respect to policies. And the president stood up there last year and said, he told blacks they need to take off their bedroom slippers, stop their grumbling and complaining. I mean, what is that about? You think he would have told Jewish Americans to take off their yarmulkes? The mainstream media was silent, you know? They were quiet, no big deal. It's just the president doing his thing, you know? He's talking to an all-black crowd. I mean, and it was with respect to jobs and the economy. Stop complaining, get off your butt, get a job. Well, the unemployment at that time for black Americans was just coming off 16%, almost double the national average. Nobody said anything. But if a white politician had done that, had spoken to an all-black crowd and told black Americans to take off their bedroom slippers, I want you to think about what the response would be. So, sadly, I think due to the one-sided media coverage of this president, never before, in my opinion, have Americans gotten such a distorted view of politics, particularly black Americans. And despite the facts that I laid out to you, that blacks have suffered disproportionately with respect to wealth destruction compared to their white counterparts, foreclosures, they're being told to vote for Barack Obama because he's black. And they're told to forget everything else, it doesn't matter. He needs more time. And I'm going to give you an example of this. The chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Emanuel Cleaver, told the Root, which is a blog, it's a blog publication that many of you probably looked at. He said, quote, with 14% unemployment, and he laughed, he was chuckling when when I read the interview, it sounded like he was chuckling, he was very upbeat and bubbly about it. He said, with 14% unemployment, if we had a white president, we'd be marching around the White House. The president knows we are going to act in deference to him in a way we wouldn't to someone else. So the comment was again ignored by, it just swept under the rug by the press. And along with the many unanswered questions we have now swirling around Benghazi. And I thought what was really particularly reprehensible in the second debate was when Candy Crowley interjected herself as a participant in the debate and defended the president's lie about first calling the Benghazi a terrorist attack in his September Rose Garden remarks, which he did not do. He talked broadly about terrorist attacks against America and said he wouldn't tolerate them. And nor did the media bat an eye when actress Lena Dunham, maybe you have seen this, but you should Google it if you haven't. Lena Dunham, she has that show on HBO right now, Girls, I think is the name of it. It's a news series. She's in her 20s. There's an ad that she's doing. If you go on Obama's website, you can see it. And it says, she equates, and I'm not making this up, I wish I was, voting for the first time to losing your virginity, so you should make it special. You should make it special and vote for Barack Obama. Now, I was talking about it with Marianne when she picked me up today. Where do you begin with that? That is insulting to women. I'm not reduced to my female parts and my vagina, and I don't vote for somebody thinking it's going to be my first time sexually. So inappropriate on so many levels, and young women, you should be outraged. Absolutely outraged no matter who you're voting for. You're reduced to your lady parts, like Michelle Malkin said. I mean, we're bigger than our lady parts. And then we have, you guys probably saw this, Sarah Palin accused Obama recently of shucking and jiving on foreign policy with respect to Benghazi. She said this last week. All of a sudden I see it's blown up on Twitter that she's a racist. Even though the term shucking and jiving is used broadly by a lot of people to mean you're procrastinating, you're avoiding doing something, right? So she had to she didn't back down, she put something on Facebook. She said she tells her youngest daughter, stop shucking and jiving and do your homework. And I mean, I guess now the Bee Gees song, Jive Talking, I guess they're racist too. Weird. But anyway, to wrap this up, Obama has also used social media pretty effectively to bait and hook voters and the media with his distractions, because I don't hear him talking about his record, do you? I mean, Obamacare is so great, the Supreme Court upheld it as a tax. Why isn't he talking about it? If things are so great, where are the jobs? Talk about it. Talk about what you've done, what your record is. Instead, he talks about the false war on women. Remember they said Ann Romney didn't have a job because she stayed at home and raised her 5 kids? Yeah, my mom and a lot of other women took great offense at that. And then remember binders full of women and the 0% of blacks. Well, I'm one standing right here before you. There are a lot of us on Twitter. And then there's the Big Bird and the bayonets and Romnesia. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, you really need to think about this. And the campaign blows this up on the internet. They do the hashtag. You guys have seen it. You're on social media. You've seen it. So, in spite of all the noise and the media bias, we find ourselves in a dead heat. And I think that's the things, some polls look like that, things have tilted toward Romney because of the debates. And it was really the debates, I think, and Romney's plan to move America forward that we are in the situation we are, with independents and other Americans looking at Mitt Romney and giving him serious consideration. He really, I think, left an impression on voters, particularly independents, who were waiting to see an unleashed Romney, if you will, free of media distortions, who decisively made his case to the American people. And Mitt Romney said, and I think this is very telling to me what it really boils down to, he said in the final debate, he looked at the president and he said, attacking me is not an agenda. And when you remove the president's race from this picture and his lack of a plan, and you remove those two things from what I would say is this election narrative that we see played out in the media, in all aspects of the media, whether online or offline, and you examine the policies in literally black and white, write them on paper, what he's done, what Romney is proposing, I think Obama looks empty and hollow, and I think Romney looks like a man with a plan. Now, you might not agree with everything that is in his plan, but he's putting forward something, and he's willing to take responsibility for it. Again, I'm going to say this again. Mitt Romney is putting forward something and willing to take responsibility for it. And I want to end by reading you something. You probably have realized by now I like the Wall Street Journal a little bit. I read a lot, I quote it a lot. I just think great writing, great, they're great, tons of great newspapers, but just they do a bang-up job at thinking critically about a lot of different things, I think, even in their front section. So William McGurn, who's a great columnist at the Wall Street Journal, he's been a columnist for a long time. He wrote something recently, I think he called it Obama, something about Obama and the Wizard of Oz, but it was about 2 weeks ago, you can check it out. This is what he said. I think he summed up the last 4 years very well. He said, Obama was just a man from the Midwest who pumped himself up into something far beyond his mortal self and got the whole of Oz to believe it. Voters need to ask themselves, what more of the past 4 years of what Obama is selling do you want more of? Is it his high joblessness and hobbled economy? Or is it his race? And I think the choice is clear. So that's it.
You got some good
Talking up
time.
there.
So let's just
Anyway.
take questions as they come. We'll start with students, and don't be bashful. She hasn't been bashful, so come at her or agree with her or whatever you want. We don't have fun if
Yeah.
there isn't something going on here.
You can ask me. It doesn't have to be about what I talked about. I just try to talk about something that I thought. Yes.
I hope this isn't too vague and global to be useful anyway, but, and it's sort of obvious too, but I just feel like I need to ask it anyways.
Right.
Is it important in sort of modern political environment, in sort of a new millennium, to consider a candidate's race in the election process?
I think that's a great question. I'm probably not going to have exact answer for it because I think you can answer it in a lot of different ways. I think that Obama was the first. He was the first candidate because he was a black man that got one of the party's nominations for president, and it happened to be the Democrats. And it was president of the United States. We have never had a president of color. So it was historic and unique in that myself as a black woman struggled with that when it was a specialist about it, certainly, especially for black Americans. And it was a good, I talked to my mom and others who sat at lunch counters and fought against segregation. So it was monumental in a lot of ways. But I think that because of the monumental aspect of him being the first, somehow along the way, we lost consciousness that he still had to be held accountable to, was he fit to do the job, and were we going to hold him accountable on the other side of that ballot box, like on the other side of it coming out? I guess the good and the bad news for Barack Obama for the president is that he was a guinea pig. And I think we learned a lot about judging somebody on their race or gender for office. Hillary, we judged her. We kept saying the first woman who could be president. And I would argue that, we can look at it, but it should not be the deciding factor. We have to look at how the person's going to lead the country or whatever office he's being elected to, and if he's going to follow through with his agenda and not get so caught up in the euphoria of the gender or the race. Now, I can say this now because, as a country, we've all been on the other side of that. I think there was some good things about his election, the fact that we could finally, as a country, check the box. But as I was preparing remarks to talk to you today, I had even forgotten so much of the break that I feel like he had gotten on, when he was running for office. I mean, I remember picking up the Washington Post, and what really bothered me is his stories were always above the fold. Now, I don't know if I think if we went back and did an audit, I feel like his positioning in the front section of the paper was always superior psychologically to McCain's. And that's subliminal messaging. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I think that at this point, I would argue that we can't have the race or gender be the measure of a candidacy, the overriding measure. I just think it doesn't serve us.
Can I ask a follow-up question
Sure.
to that? Do you think that Obama's performance as president of the United States holds a risk with a significant enough portion of the voting population or any chances for black American candidates to be elected in the future?
Yes, I do. And it's funny because I don't know why I didn't put this in my remarks, but I was coming back from New York about a week ago. I was on the train with an old professor. He teaches at Yale, and he told me I'm a fiscal conservative. He said I'm a Democrat, but I'm a fiscal conservative. So we were just talking about politics, and he told me that he felt like President Obama blew it, being the first black president, that he did have so much resting on his shoulders, but he felt like as the first, he really blew it because he had an opportunity to bring the country together in a historic election and govern more like a Clinton would, tack to the center after the first year, Even the first couple of months, really, President Clinton did with Hillary Care. He realized he couldn't get it through, and and Gingrich pushed him to the center, and he went there, and they got a lot done. So I think, yes, I sadly think it was history, I do not believe, will be kind to President Obama based on his policies. And also that being firstness as the first black president, I think he blew it. And I think he's run a really nasty, divisive re-election campaign. And the way I believe that I've been in Washington since, gosh, I've lived in D.C. over 15 years. And I've watched administrations come and go. And I can tell you without ever, I'm not a political insider by any means, but people work together in Washington. That's the only way you cut deals. That's the way it's got to happen. And when Bush was there, when Clinton was there, and I'm just telling you the years I've lived in D.C., and I know people who worked in the White House, on the Hill. I knew a lot of people in the Clinton administration and Bush. And they didn't like it, but there's a lot of sucking up and making it happen. And this president, there really is an arrogance, I believe, about him. And this goes back to the way he was embraced by the mainstream media.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. From my understanding, unlike China, the media in here is not controlled by the government.
Right.
And I just want to be kind of cautious about why this kind of situation, highlight or hide part of information will happen in the media channel, and how media choose what kind of public information they want to show. Is it because some part of audience want to see this kind of information, or other reasons?
Sure, that's a great question. So the question, I don't know if everybody could hear, is, we have free speech. We're not like other countries where state-run news, the government controls what the people read and see and consume with respect to news. And so why are we in this situation where we have this bias? Well, I think that's what you asked. So